If you're ready to dive into another tale where humanity flips the galaxy's expectations upside down, don't forget to like this video, drop a comment about your favorite part, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next story. Now let's begin. The Galactic Council's archives spoke of it in hushed tones. Entire civilizations had etched warnings into stone, burned entire forests to erase its spoor, abandoned planets where even a trace of it lingered. They called it many things across languages that spanned the stars. Death that walks, the hunger between suns, extinction incarnate. For millennia, the predator had been myth as much as fact. No species alive claimed to have studied it directly and survived. A flicker on a long-dead probe, a torn-apart colony vessel, a battlefield where armor was shredded as though by claws the size of spears, these were the fragments of history it left behind. It did not conquer. It did not build. It simply appeared, and what lived near it soon did not. To most it was a story meant to frighten the young into obedience. But in the highest chamber of the council, every elder knew the truth. Somewhere out in the wild edges of the spiral arms, the predator still moved. And into that same frontier, a human scout ship limped through the void. Commander Elias Vance pressed his hand against the crackling console, listening to the static-filled protests of his ship's dying systems. "Tell me you've got something, Marcus." From beneath a half-open panel, Dr. Marcus Hale shoved his head out, face smudged with carbon scoring. His glasses, an old-fashioned affectation for a scientist, were tilted askew. "What I've got is a reactor leak, a fried comm array, and an imminent crash if you don't ease us out of this gravity well." Elias snorted. "Good news all around then?" The ship rattled as another flare from the planet's storm-laden atmosphere buffeted its hull. The scout craft, Vigilant Dawn, wasn't built for graceful landings. Elias wrestled with the controls, jaw set in a grim line. His dark eyes flicked across a console still speckled with glowing warning symbols. He'd flown through pirate ambushes, evaded mercenary gunboats, even once threaded a path through an asteroid belt during a meteor storm. None of those had felt quite as much like willingly steering into hellfire as this descent. Marcus's voice strained over the howl of alarms. "I'm just going to say it, if we survive this, I am retiring to teach xenobotany on a peaceful little moon with nothing deadlier than pollen allergies." "Duly noted," Elias said through gritted teeth, forcing the nose of the ship upward as they tore through the lower atmosphere. The violent turbulence threatened to tear the craft apart. For a moment, both men thought the ship would break before it reached ground. Then, with a scream of overstressed metal and a final groan, the Vigilant Dawn slammed into a jungle clearing. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of small fires and the hiss of cooling metal. Elias pried himself out of his chair, ignoring the blood trickling from a cut on his temple. He glanced around the ruined cockpit and muttered, "I give that landing an 8 out of 10. Points lost for style." Marcus dragged himself upright, groaning. "If you're finished with the comedy routine, perhaps we should figure out if the hull breach is letting in anything toxic." Always the optimist. Elias retrieved a portable scanner from the wall. A few tense minutes later he exhaled. "Atmosphere's breathable. Hazardous fauna readings, unclear." "Unclear," Marcus repeated, his voice rising an octave. "That's not a word I enjoy when applied to unknown biospheres." They exited the wreck, the thick jungle pressing close around the clearing. The air smelled of ozone and damp earth, mingling with the sharp tang of burning alloy. Towering trees draped in vines formed a canopy so dense that sunlight filtered down only in fractured beams. Marcus's eyes darted everywhere, cataloging flora even while his nerves prickled. "I've never seen foliage with that pigmentation." "Could indicate." A distant sound cut him off. Not the call of a bird, not the rustle of leaves, but something deeper, resonant, like a growl stretched across the bones of the forest. Elias stilled instantly, hand falling to the sidearm at his hip. His military instincts sharpened. The noise was no ordinary animal. It carried weight like a declaration. "You are intruders." Marcus whispered, "Tell me that's just atmospheric distortion." "Wish I could," Elias murmured. His voice carried none of Marcus's panic, but his eyes swept the shadows with lethal calm. He'd heard predators before, in war zones on frontier colonies, but this sound carried a resonance that unsettled even him. The growl came again, closer this time, vibrating through the soles of their boots. Marcus clutched the scanner as though it could shield him. "Elias, this planet, do you think?" Elias's lips twitched in a humorless smile. "If you're about to say what I think you are, don't. Superstition has no place here." But the truth gnawed at him. He knew the whispers. Every spacer did. This sector had been blacklisted, not for radiation or contagion, but because old maps bore a single notation, Extinction. No ship had been authorized to enter. Yet here they were, by accident or fate. The underbrush rustled. Heavy, deliberate steps crushed vegetation as something massive circled just beyond sight. Elias raised his weapon, every muscle taut. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then in the half-light beneath the trees, a pair of eyes appeared, luminous, amber, unblinking. Marcus froze. His breath hitched, words dying in his throat. He had studied legends as an academic curiosity, but seeing those eyes in the flesh turned scholarship into terror. Elias steadied his grip, his tone grim but steady. Well, Marcus, looks like we're not alone after all. The eyes did not blink, did not retreat. They watched. Intelligent. Measuring. The men stood at the edge of their wreckage, one clutching a scanner, the other with a weapon raised. The galaxy had whispered of extinction for centuries. And now, on a forgotten world, humanity stood face to face with the myth itself. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, until the creature shifted, unseen yet undeniable, and the clearing filled with the weight of a predator's presence. Elias whispered just loud enough for Marcus to hear, "Stay very still." The jungle answered with nothing but the thunder of their own hearts. The jungle exhaled a silence so profound that even the hiss of cooling wreckage seemed intrusive. The eyes did not move, yet the weight of their scrutiny pressed on both men like a physical force. Marcus clutched his scanner so tightly his knuckles whitened, its faint hum the only sound he dared allow. Elias, weapon leveled but finger steady on the trigger, refused to look away. He had the grim certainty that if he blinked, those eyes would vanish, and reappear behind them. Then the foliage shifted and the beast emerged. It was larger than any creature Elias had ever seen, a towering amalgam of muscle and sinew that moved with dreadful grace. Its hide bore the texture of stone and shadow, mottled with scars that glowed faintly where old wounds had knitted. Jagged claws gouged the earth as it stepped forward. Its maw, lined with teeth curved like hooked blades, parted only enough to release a low growl that resonated in Elias's chest. Marcus whispered in a voice that trembled despite his best efforts, "Extinction incarnate." Elias did not confirm. He simply braced himself, every instinct screaming to fire, yet some colder calculation holding him back. Firing might not even scratch it, and if the legends carried any truth, it would only provoke. Instead he spoke, low and steady, not for the predator's understanding but for Marcus's. "If it meant to kill us, we'd already be dead." The words did little to soothe, but Marcus clung to them as though they were a shield. The creature lowered its head, nostrils flaring, pulling in their scent. Its luminous eyes flicked from Elias to Marcus, then back, lingering on Elias as though deciding something unspoken. Only then did Elias notice the irregularities marring its form. Along its flank, beneath the layers of hide, fragments of scorched metal protruded. Old shrapnel fused to flesh. Burns streaked across its side, not fresh but still angry, testament to battles survived. It had been wounded, gravely at some point, yet here it stood, radiating vitality. Marcus swallowed, his voice unsteady but laced with reluctant fascination. "Those fragments, that's manufactured alloy. Naval grade. Elias, this thing's fought ships." Elias did not take his eyes off the beast. And lived. The predator inhaled again, then exhaled in a heavy gust that stirred their hair. Elias saw no malice, only scrutiny. Against reason he lowered his weapon, not entirely but enough to signal he did not intend to provoke. "You're hurt," Elias said as though speaking to a wounded soldier. He slipped a hand into his kit pouch, retrieving a compact medfoam canister. He did not step forward, only raised the canister slightly, keeping his motions deliberate. "I've got something that might help." Marcus hissed, aghast. "Are you insane? You can't." "Marcus," Elias cut him off without looking. "Fear won't keep it from deciding. Maybe respect will." He crouched slowly, placed the medfoam on the ground, then retreated a step. The predator watched, eyes narrowing with something that might have been curiosity. It lowered its massive head, sniffed at the object, then nudged it with a claw that could have shredded steel. The canister rolled, hissing as a trace of foam leaked out. The beast's nostrils flared again. Then, impossibly, it pressed its wounded side against the ground where the foam had spread, letting the substance hiss and bond into the torn flesh. Marcus gaped. "It understood?" Elias allowed himself a tight smile. Not sure if it understood. Maybe it just chose. For a long minute, predator and men regarded one another in a silence that felt more fragile than glass. Then the beast took a deliberate step closer. Marcus instinctively backpedaled, stumbling into the wreckage. Elias stood his ground. The enormous head lowered until its muzzle hovered mere feet from him. Elias could feel the warmth of its breath, smell the musk of blood and earth clinging to its hide. The predator inhaled, then rumbled deep in its chest. Elias's hand twitched. His instincts screamed to raise his weapon. Instead, he let out a half-grin, defiant even in the shadow of annihilation. "Well," he said, voice steady though his heart hammered, "you're either about to eat me, or you're about to be my new best friend." The sound that followed defied explanation. Not a growl, not a snarl, but something like a huff, amusement perhaps. Then the predator lowered its body, crouching beside the wreck as though to rest. Its eyes never left Elias, but its teeth no longer gleamed in menace. Marcus sputtered. This isn't. Elias, do you even grasp what's happening? That thing, entire fleets have. Yeah, Elias interrupted, still watching the beast. And right now it's lying down next to us. I'd say that beats being eaten. The predator shifted slightly, its bulk settling against the wreckage with a thud that made the ground tremble. Its presence was terrifying, yet oddly protective, like a mountain choosing not to crush what stood in its shadow. Elias lowered himself onto a piece of scorched plating, his exhaustion finally overtaking adrenaline. He exhaled slowly. "You need a name." Marcus spun toward him aghast. "A name? Are you deranged? You cannot name Extinction Incarnate." "Sure I can," Elias said. His smirk was faint but real. "If we're going to survive here, we'll need to call it something. And Extinction Incarnate is a mouthful." He studied the beast, watching its steady breathing, the faint shimmer of its scarred hide. Then without irony he said, "Fluffy?" Marcus stared at him as though he'd lost all reason. "Fluffy? You want to call the most feared apex predator in recorded galactic history, Fluffy?" Elias shrugged. "Why not? Look at it. All curled up. Fluffy fits." To Marcus's horror, the beast rumbled again, not unlike a low purr, its chest vibrating the ground beneath them. It had not understood the word, but it had understood the tone, the lack of fear. Elias leaned back, one hand resting on the scorched metal, the other still close to his sidearm, just in case. But in his eyes, the decision was already made. Whatever this creature was, whatever terror it had inflicted upon the galaxy, it had chosen not to devour him. That meant something. Marcus rubbed his temples, muttering, "We're doomed. Humanity is doomed. The Council will see this and declare war. And you're sitting here naming it like some pet." Elias's grin widened faintly. "Not a pet. A partner. Maybe it just needed someone stubborn enough to treat it like more than a monster." The predator's massive tail shifted, brushing debris aside as though making room for itself. Elias watched the motion with keen amusement. "See? Fluffy agrees." Marcus groaned, slumping against the wreck. "I'll be remembered as the man who witnessed first contact with Extinction Incarnate, and let my commander name it Fluffy." Above them, unseen by human eyes, a council probe relayed every image, every sound across the stars. In the halls of power, species who had abandoned worlds at the whisper of this predator's name now saw it lying calmly beside a human. Panic would follow. Outrage. Terror. But on the jungle floor, only two men and a beast remained, one incredulous, one unyielding, and one impossibly at rest. Elias tilted his head back against the wreckage, exhaustion tugging at him, but a grin refusing to leave his face. He glanced at Marcus and said, "Get used to it. Fluffy's not leaving." The amber eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and though the jungle seethed with unseen dangers, nothing dared approach. Wordlessly the beast closed its eyes. And for the first time in recorded galactic memory, Extinction Incarnate slept, beside a human. The feed from the hidden probe reached the council chambers within hours. Grainy at first, then sharpened by analysis, the images left no room for denial. The beast lay curled beside the wreckage, its bulk pressed protectively against the metal shell, while a human sat comfortably in its shadow. The chamber filled with the rustle of robes, the scrape of claws, the hiss of disbelief as delegates leaned closer to the suspended display. "It cannot be," rasped a scaled minister whose ancestors had fled entire systems at the rumor of that silhouette. "No living thing draws breath beside Extinction Incarnate." Yet there it was. Extinction Incarnate, sleeping. And beside it, Elias Vance, running a hand across his brow as though it were nothing more than a stray animal that had taken a liking to him. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. Some demanded immediate action. Fleets dispatched to annihilate both predator and humans before contagion of myth transformed into contagion of fact. Others whispered that perhaps the predator was not what legends claimed, that time had exaggerated its ferocity. But the elder species, those who remembered, did not doubt. Their silence spoke louder than panic. A high counselor's voice boomed above the din, "This cannot stand. The predator does not ally. It does not rest. It consumes. And yet here, it chooses humanity. If one species has bent its will, what else might they command?" Across the stars, broadcasts whispered of it within hours. Not official, not sanctioned, but inevitable, rumors seeping into spacer bars, mining camps, frontier colonies. Humanity, still newcomers to the galactic community, had done what no elder race dared. They had not slain the predator nor fled from it. They had named it. And it had answered by staying. On the jungle world, Elias and Marcus remained ignorant of the scale of chaos their circumstances had unleashed. Their universe had shrunk to the battered wreck, the towering trees, and the constant presence of the beast Elias insisted on calling Fluffy. Marcus crouched over a jury-rigged transmitter, his hands stained with grease. "If I can reroute the backup core, I might coax a signal strong enough to reach orbit. Assuming the antenna isn't fried beyond repair." Elias leaned against a twisted beam, watching Fluffy prowl the perimeter. The predator moved with silent precision, each step flattening foliage, each pause radiating alertness. Smaller creatures fled at its passing. Winged shapes darted into the canopy to avoid its gaze. Elias couldn't help a smirk. "Pretty good watchdog, don't you think?" Marcus adjusted his crooked glasses and shot him a glare. "Dog. Elias, that thing is to a dog what a star is to a candle flame. You cannot normalize this." "Normalizing keeps me sane," Elias replied evenly. He pushed off the beam, striding toward the edge of the clearing where Fluffy had crouched low, growling at something beyond sight. Elias stopped a few feet behind, not daring to intrude. The growl tapered when the beast sensed him near, as if reassured. Marcus shook his head, muttering, "I don't know whether to admire your calm or have you committed." Elias didn't answer. He crouched, studying the jungle beyond, trusting the predator's instincts more than his own sensors. Something moved out there, something too quiet for a mere animal. He didn't say so aloud. Marcus had enough panic without confirmation. As dusk bled into night, the clearing glowed with the faint shimmer of bioluminescent plants. Marcus worked until his hands trembled, and Elias scavenged for supplies. Fluffy vanished into the darkness once, returning with the broken carcass of a horned beast larger than a ground car. It dropped the corpse before Elias, rumbling expectantly. Marcus recoiled in horror. "It hunts for you. Or for us," Elias said, examining the kill. He found the irony almost laughable. A creature that had ended fleets now delivered dinner like a loyal soldier reporting to his commander. He patted Fluffy's scarred flank cautiously. "Thanks, partner." The predator lowered its head, eyes closing for a brief moment as though the touch was understood. Later, as Marcus dozed uneasily against the wreck, Elias sat awake, watching Fluffy breathe. The steady rise and fall of its chest was oddly soothing, though he never forgot the power coiled beneath. He wondered, not for the first time, why it stayed. Perhaps the legends had been wrong, or perhaps no one before had dared to look it in the eyes without flinching. Humanity had survived worse odds. Why not this? Unbeknownst to them, they were not alone on the planet. The first mercenary vessel touched down under cover of storm clouds, its hull painted in the insignia of a dozen governments desperate to contain the situation. They came with orders from the council itself. Erase the humans, erase the predator, erase all trace before the contagion of hope could spread. Fluffy sensed them before sensors did. Its head snapped up, nostrils flaring, body rigid. Elias followed its gaze, saw nothing but shadows, yet trusted the beast's reaction. He moved quickly, shaking Marcus awake. "What now?" Marcus mumbled, bleary. "We've got company," Elias said. The words hadn't finished leaving his mouth when the first shot ripped through the clearing, searing past them and striking the wreckage. Sparks cascaded. Marcus dove for cover, Elias dragging him by the collar. Shapes emerged from the tree line, armored figures moving with military precision. Plasma rifles flared in the dark. Fluffy erupted in motion. The predator's roar shattered the night, a sound so primal it froze the mercenaries mid-stride. Then it was among them, a blur of claws and muscle. One was flung aside like a rag doll, armor shrieking as it caved. Another fired point blank, the bolt scoring the beast's shoulder but failing to slow it. Blood, dark and smoking, sprayed, Yet Fluffy tore through the line as though pain were an afterthought. Elias returned fire, covering Marcus as he scrambled to secure the transmitter. Every bolt he fired was punctuated by the thunder of Fluffy's charge, the ground itself quaking beneath the predator's rage. Marcus shouted over the din, "They're here for it, they'll never stop, Elias." "Then we don't let them take it," Elias growled back, firing again. The skirmish was brief but brutal. Within minutes, the clearing was strewn with smoking wrecks of armor and shattered rifles. The survivors fled into the jungle, their screams echoing until silence reclaimed the night. Fluffy stood in the center, chest heaving, claws dripping. It turned toward Elias, waiting, not for command but for recognition. Elias lowered his weapon, meeting the predator's gaze. Slowly, deliberately he nodded. "Good work, Fluffy." The beast rumbled, lowering its massive head. Marcus stared at them both, horror and awe mingling in his eyes. "Do you realize what just happened? That thing, Extinction Incarnate, just fought with us. And obeyed your voice." Elias's expression remained unreadable. Not obeyed. Chose. Above the storm clouds, the surviving mercenaries transmitted frantic reports to their employers. By dawn, the council would know their mission had failed. Humanity and the predator stood together. In the halls of power, the panic would sharpen into something deadlier than fear. But in the jungle clearing, Elias cleaned his weapon, Marcus stared at the wreckage in dazed disbelief, and Fluffy settled down beside them once more, eyes burning like twin suns in the dark. The galaxy had called it extinction. Tonight, Extinction had stood guard over two humans. Dawn broke over the shattered clearing, thin shafts of light piercing the canopy and casting the aftermath of battle in stark relief. The smell of scorched metal and blood lingered, sharp and unrelenting. Elias cleaned the carbon from his sidearm with practiced precision, movement steady, though fatigue gnawed at his limbs. Across from him, Marcus hunched over the transmitter, coaxing damaged circuits into reluctant obedience. And between them, like a sentinel carved from nightmares, Fluffy lay stretched across the wreck's hull, chest rising and falling in deep, rumbling breaths. Silence held for a while, broken only by the scratch of tools and the occasional creak of cooling armor from fallen mercenaries. Marcus muttered without lifting his head, "The council won't stop. You know that, don't you? They'll send more. Fleets even. They can't allow this to exist." Elias glanced at the predator, whose eyes cracked open at the sound of Marcus's voice, glowing amber in the half-light. "Then let them come," he said evenly. "We're not exactly defenseless anymore." "Not defenseless?" Marcus snapped, exhaustion fraying his nerves. He gestured wildly at the mountain of muscle and claws. "That's not a defense, Elias, that's a cataclysm we're babysitting. Every world that's ever crossed paths with it has been abandoned or buried. And somehow, you've convinced yourself we've leashed it." Elias holstered his weapon, fixing Marcus with a level look. "I don't think it's leashed. I think it made a choice. Same as us." Before Marcus could respond, Fluffy's head rose sharply, ears, or what passed for them, angling toward the treeline. The jungle stilled. A vibration thrummed faintly beneath their boots, too regular to be natural. Elias's jaw tightened. Engines. The first ship broke through the canopy minutes later, leaves and branches spiraling in the downdraft. Not a mercenary dropship this time, but armored troop carriers bearing the insignia of multiple species. The council wasn't dabbling in deniable forces now. They were committing. Elias barked, "Marcus, get that transmitter online. We need a signal, any signal." Marcus scrambled, hands shaking as he worked. "Even if I get it running, who's supposed to answer? No human fleets within reach." A sudden thunder of explosions cut him off as pods slammed into the ground around the clearing, hatches bursting open. Rows of armored soldiers poured out, weapons bristling. Their formation was disciplined, their movements unified. This was no raid. It was an extermination order. Fluffy rose with a guttural roar, every inch of its body radiating violence. The sound rattled armor plates and froze even seasoned troops in place. Then the predator lunged. The battlefield erupted in chaos. Soldiers fired in disciplined volleys, streaks of plasma igniting the clearing. Fluffy tore through the barrage, its hide searing and smoking, but its momentum never faltered. A single swipe of its claws crushed a trooper and sent the rest scattering. Elias fired from cover, his shots precise, controlled. He moved with the predator as though they shared the same rhythm. When Fluffy surged forward, Elias flanked. When the beast retreated momentarily to shake off fire, Elias advanced to cover its side. The synchronization was unspoken yet unmistakable. Marcus, crouched by the transmitter, could hardly breathe. Each glance up revealed a spectacle beyond belief. The galaxy's nightmare, fighting not against, but for a human commander. He had spent years cataloging species, charting predator-prey dynamics, mapping evolutionary logic. None of it explained this. His rational mind reeled, but his heart whispered a dangerous truth. Elias was right. This was choice. The soldiers adjusted tactics quickly, rallying with heavy ordnance. Portable cannons unfolded, locking onto Fluffy. The first shot slammed into its chest, blasting it backward into the wreckage. Metal screamed as the beast hit, its roar cracking into a sound of pain that twisted Marcus's stomach. "Fluffy!" Elias shouted, charging toward the soldiers. He fired relentlessly, forcing them to divert attention, but the cannons whined as they prepared for another volley. Fluffy rose. Blood poured from the wound, steaming as it hit the ground, but its eyes blazed brighter than fire. With a roar that shook leaves from the trees, it hurled itself at the gunners. Claws sheared through steel, and in moments the cannons were nothing but twisted slag. Elias seized the opening, sprinting to Marcus's side. "Tell me you've got it working." Marcus's face was pale, but determination hardened his features. Sparks spat from the console, but the display flickered alive. "I can boost a signal, short range. Maybe enough to piggyback off their comms." "Do it." Elias fired another volley to cover them. "The council needs to hear this. All of them." Marcus hesitated, fingers trembling over the controls. "Elias, if we broadcast, it won't just be the council. The whole galaxy will see. You'll make us a target bigger than anything we've ever faced." Elias glanced back at Fluffy, who stood bloodied but unbowed amid the smoking remains of enemy squads. His voice was iron. "They already fear us. Better they see the truth with their own eyes." The transmitter whined, caught, then linked. Across orbital relays, council channels, even illicit pirate frequencies, the signal spread. A live feed of the clearing, 2 humans, a wrecked ship, and beside them the predator that had haunted legends, now fighting in their defense. Council chambers across the galaxy erupted in pandemonium as the broadcast reached them. Some demanded immediate escalation, fleets dispatched to glass the planet. Others whispered of prophecy, of myths long ignored, that the predator would bow to none but the unbroken. And a few, watching Elias stand shoulder to shoulder with the beast, felt something worse than fear. Admiration. Back on the ground, the battle pressed on. Reinforcements poured in, soldiers encircling the clearing. Fluffy fought with undiminished ferocity, each movement carving destruction through disciplined ranks. Elias moved like a man possessed, his commands clipped and sure, as though he had led this creature through a dozen campaigns. Marcus realized then that the true danger wasn't just the predator. It was Elias, the human who had looked extinction in the eye and grinned. If Fluffy had chosen him, then perhaps the galaxy's balance had shifted forever. The last soldier broke, fleeing into the jungle. Silence fell, heavy and staggering. Smoke drifted through the clearing, mingling with the scent of scorched earth. Fluffy limped back toward Elias, blood streaking its flank, yet it lowered its head in something almost like deference. Elias rested a hand against its scarred hide, steady despite the tremor in his muscles. "We hold this ground," he said quietly, more to Marcus than to himself. "No matter who they send." Marcus stared at them both, realization settling like ice. The council would never forgive this. They had just witnessed the impossible, humanity standing not against but with extinction itself. And the predator had listened. Above the canopy, distant thunder rumbled, not weather but the approach of larger engines. The council was not finished. Not by far. The sky burned with descending fire. Ships vast enough to eclipse the canopy broke atmosphere, their hulls streaking with plasma as they descended in formation. The council had committed more than squads or mercenary detachments this time. They had brought fleets as if to scour the entire continent clean. The ground shuddered beneath the weight of their arrival, and Marcus could only whisper, "They mean to erase the planet." Elias stood unmoving, hand pressed against Fluffy's scarred hide, his eyes locked on the sky as if daring it to fall. His face bore the exhaustion of battle, but his voice when it came was resolute. "They won't succeed. Not while we stand." Marcus spun on him, incredulous. "You don't understand, Elias. This isn't a skirmish. It's annihilation. We can't fight an armada with a single predator and 2 rifles." Elias turned to him, calm, unwavering. "Then we'll show them something fleets can't kill. Conviction. Unity. The bond they said was impossible." He looked down at Fluffy, who lifted its monstrous head, blood still steaming along its wounds. They've feared this creature for eons. They'll fear it more when they see where it chooses to stand. The jungle trembled again as enormous troop carriers descended, disgorging ranks of soldiers in gleaming armor. Their formation extended beyond sight, a wall of disciplined death. At their head strode a figure in regalia, Council Arbiter Vale, draped in the authority of a dozen species. His amplified voice echoed across the clearing. Humans Elias Grant, Marcus Hale. You harbor an Extinction-class organism. Release yourselves into our custody and surrender the beast. Refusal will result in planetary sterilization. You have one chance to comply. Marcus's knees weakened at the words. He knew the council did not bluff. Worlds had burned for less. He glanced desperately at Elias. Please. Think of Earth. Think of the colonies. If they call us defiant, they'll wipe out everything we've built. Elias's gaze never left Vale. His hand remained steady against Fluffy's flank. Earth doesn't kneel. And neither do I. The declaration carried across the ranks, translated in 100 tongues. A ripple passed through the soldiers, some rigid with fury, others with something more dangerous, hesitation. Vale's mandibles clicked in disdain. So be it. Burn them. The command unleashed a storm. Plasma fire erupted, a sea of searing light that turned the clearing into a furnace. But before the wave could engulf them, Fluffy surged forward, a mountain of rage and defiance. Its roar split the battlefield, shaking soldiers from their formation. Bolts struck its hide, burning deep furrows, but the beast pressed on, a juggernaut unstoppable. Elias moved with it, his shots weaving through the chaos, felling officers, disrupting coordination. His movements were sharp, efficient, each step taken with the certainty of one who knew this moment had always been his. Marcus remained by the transmitter, broadcasting still, his heart hammering as the feed carried everything. The council's overwhelming force, Fluffy's unrelenting assault, Elias's unyielding stance. Billions across the galaxy watched as myth became reality, as the predator once called Extinction fought not against but for a human commander. Soldiers fell in droves. Their discipline faltered beneath the raw, primal terror of Fluffy's advance. Yet the council's numbers were vast, and no matter how many broke, more pressed forward. Step by step, Elias and his companion were driven back toward the wreckage. Vale advanced through the carnage, his shield shimmering, his stride measured. His voice cut through the chaos. You cannot win, human. That thing is death itself, and death consumes all, even you. Elias's answer was a gunshot, striking the Arbiter's shield with a flash of sparks. Then let death consume you first. The predator lunged, slamming into Vale's guard with earth-shattering force. Claws screeched against energy fields, jaws snapping with fury. Vale staggered, forced back a step, but his shield held. Soldiers rallied to his side, pouring fire into the beast. Elias charged through them, carving a path to Vale with relentless precision. His rifle clicked empty, and he drew his sidearm, firing point blank until even that sputtered dry. Then he swung the weapon itself as a club, his every motion fueled by will alone. Fluffy roared in tandem, a sound so primal it felt as though the planet itself shuddered in agreement. Wounded, battered, yet undeterred, it fought on. At last Elias stood before Vale, their eyes locking across the chaos. The Arbiter sneered, mandibles curling. You would stake humanity's fate on this abomination? Elias, bloodied but unbowed, raised his voice so all could hear. I would stake it on choice. On loyalty freely given. That's what terrifies you, Arbiter. Not claws. Not teeth. But that something you could never control chose us. As if to punctuate his words, Fluffy slammed one massive claw down. The Arbiter's shield cracked, the sound sharp as thunder. The second blow shattered it. The third tore Vale from the ground and hurled him lifeless into the ranks of his soldiers. The battlefield froze. In that heartbeat of silence, the galaxy bore witness to the impossible, the nightmare of ages bowing its head to a human's touch, while the council's chosen champion lay broken at their feet. Marcus gasped as the feed's numbers spiked. Millions, no billions were watching. The myth had become truth, and truth had become revelation. Elias placed his hand once more upon Fluffy's hide, steady despite the tremor in his arm. His voice carried, unshakable. We will not surrender. Not to fear. Not to extinction. If you want this world, you'll have to kill us all, and we will take your legions with us. The soldiers did not advance. Some lowered their weapons. Others stepped back. For the first time, the council's iron discipline fractured not from terror alone, but from doubt. Above, the great ships still hovered, engines growling, weapons primed. Yet even they hesitated, as if uncertain whether fire would quell this spark or spread it across the stars. Marcus, watching through the feed, felt a shiver of realization. This was no longer a battle. It was the birth of legend. Elias turned his gaze skyward, defiance etched into every line of his face. Beside him, the Predator stood battered but unbroken, amber eyes blazing. Together they formed a silhouette the galaxy would never forget. A man and the beast once called Extinction, united in defiance. And as the Council's fleets hung poised above, the choice became clear: to scorch the world and risk martyring a myth, or retreat and let fear of the human bond fester across every system. The universe held its breath.